This weekend's project's fixing the rear hatch on the Jeep here. And it will unlock and lock, but if we try to open the gate, it won't open. What we have to do is remove this to be able to open the rear hatch and repair that. Now before we do this job, make sure that you get yourself a new tailgate handle. Here's a part number that I'm using, because we're going to end up destroying the existing one in order to open up that rear hatch there. We see that we have one fastener over here on this side. The new one didn't come with a nut on there, so you're gonna have to use the old one. That's gonna be metric. On this side here is where the key lock cylinder is. And what we're gonna do when we remove this thing is we're going to pick this spot right here, because that is where this is fastened on there. So what happens is when you install this, you put that stud through there, and then you're gonna push this all the way that way. And you see right there, that's where the body metal goes in between those two pieces there. This piece here is going to be slid all the way this way where that engages, and then you're going to tighten this down. We're going to cut it right here, and then hopefully we'll be able to remove this piece out, and then we'll undo that from the body. We're going to cut it right in here to remove this piece out. I'm just going to use a putty knife, and I'm going to heat that up with a camp torch, and I'm going to use that to melt the plastic and then make that slice in there to remove that. Took the putty knife, we heated the end, and then we melted this all the way through right there, so that it's detached. So this has to slide this way to unhook it from there. And now that you have it unhooked from there, you're going to work on this piece here to kind of twist it up. On the bottom there, you want to get that out. Once you've got this corner pulled out from the bottom there, now we can work at it. We want to get this piece out from the top edge. So we've pulled this piece out from the top edge here. Now we've got a connection right there that we got to break. So that's that little linkage there. That little linkage there is going to be for the auto lock mechanism. So we've got to disconnect that so we can free this corner up. I'm just using a flat end screwdriver, and I'm going to work at that little plastic piece until we've disengaged it off of the linkage there. We spin that up, and now we should be able to push that linkage out of the hole. We've got that linkage disconnected now, so this end is all free right here. This rod, either it came off when we were disconnecting this, or it came off before, and that's why the hatch would not open. We've got this pulled out of the way. We're going to be looking for that rod over here on this side. So here's our rod. That rod connects down to our actuator right here. So we're going to pull up on that, and then it should release and be able to open the lift gate here. I'm going to use some pliers here to pry that up and lift that linkage up. And then you can hear that click. So now it's open. Now that we got that lift gate open here, we've got this paneling that we got to remove. So we've got a series of screws to take out of here. So we're going to have one there, one there, one there, one there. That's 4 in this area here. On both sides, we're going to have 3 here. 1, 2, and 3. We've got another 3 on this side. 1, 2, and 3. You're going to have 2 hidden ones. One in that hole there, and one in that hole right there. And when you get to the end, this is where the handle is. You're going to have one there. You're going to have another one there. Once you've removed all those screws, you'll get a putty knife or something, and you'll work around the edges, and then there's the plastic clips that you got to disengage from the body. Once the panel's removed, you can see our liftgate handle right there. There's the one screw that holds it in. Right here is that rod that gets connected onto here. And that is going to be where that opens up right on there. So that's what we've done. We've pulled that rod and we've opened this up. So we'll take that mechanism out of the other Jeep and get it on the bench, and we'll show you what we're working with. We've removed the old one out of the vehicle here. That's going to be a 10 mil, getting that nut off of there. And that is where we separated it when we removed it off of the vehicle there. We have a switch here, and on this one here, it's just plastic is belted and holding that in place. But here's one off another one here, and that switch had a screw. On the new one, there's a little peg here that lines this up, and then that's just a drilled hole, so you'll have to tap your own threads in when you screw this on, if you have this style here. Just cut those plastic tabs off with a utility knife, remove your switch, put it on your new one here. You've got a through hole on the new one, just tap your threads in there, whatever you're using to fasten that in place. I'm just going to use a Robertson screw, so I take that screw. I'm going to use the camp torch here. I'm just going to heat up the end just slightly with the screw, and then I'm going to thread that in place, and then that will go in nice and easy. Don't use too much heat, just enough to deform the plastic as you're screwing it in there, so it's not going to crack if you're trying to screw that in there cold. Now there's going to be two clips to remove that key lock cylinder. We've got this clip here that goes on there, and we've got this clip here, and that's what kind of locks it in place. And I'm just going to use a pick on both of those to pry those out of there. Once this is removed, you can push this key lock cylinder out, but you also want to remove this piece as well because it's connected to that. So we're going to remove this end piece here, and you just pull that up. Take that piece, pull it straight up over top of that, and then you're just gonna articulate this thing so it's out of the way when you pull that out, or you can remove it entirely. Once you have both of those clips removed, that clip here, that clip there, and you've got this out of the way, you should just be able to push on this, and then that'll pop right out of the hole it's in. This piece here is still attached on there. You're just gonna go right to the end, and then you've got this little plastic piece in your way here, but you'll just move this around, and then right here you're going to pull it, and it'll come right out of that little groove there. Got those pieces removed. I'm just going to clean them up, and then we're going to install them into the new handle. Here's where you can see that clip a little better, so you're going to pry that clip out. Got our clip removed. We'll take our key lock cylinder, and it just slides in there. You can only put it in one way because that side is the larger side and this side is the smaller side, and as you can see the two slots there, you can't really mix it up. It only goes in one way. Now you press this down as you push that clip in there to hold it in place. Next, we want to install this piece here, so that's going to get fastened onto that arm there as well as here, and then we use our clip. So you want to hook it onto here first, and then hook it onto there. And once that's hooked on, then you put your locking clip in there, and that holds it all together. Now in our case, we have a little problem because here's our clip. It's got to go on there, and as you can see, that's pretty tight for this to be engaged on there. But it looks like we're gonna have to change that arm out. Here's the old arm here. You can see the space we have on that pin there as compared to this one. So we have a problem here, and it looks like we're gonna have to change that whole arm out. What I'll do to remove that arm is I'm just gonna use a little zip cut there, and I'm just gonna grind away that material and free that arm up. We've got the liftgate handle all assembled here. We've done a few modifications we'll go over. First thing was, this was the factory arm that came with the brand new one, and this pin here, that recess in there is not wide enough for our linkage, I guess you'd call it, that goes on there. So we switched this out, and here's the old one here that we switched out. When we switched that out, there was a rivet here. I just ground off the end and I punched that rivet out, and as it turns out, a 1/4-inch bolt will fit in there just fine. I just put a 1/4-inch bolt in there with a Teflon locker nut, and then that will hold it, and then I just got like a small washer in there to slide as that thing slides, and you could set your own tension with that nylon lock nut there. And then we fastened our switch on here, and that's just a Robertson, and then we used the torch to heat the screw and then deform the plastic as we screwed that in there. We've modified this piece here, and the reason we did that is because the factory piece is like this clip, and you can see where it's damaged there. Those are folded right over. So this thing is damaged, and then that's how the rod slips out of there, and then you're not able to open your liftgate anymore. So this is like a failure point. And what I did was I just made this, all it is just a little piece of pipe, and then I drilled and tapped 1/4-inch hole in the side, and I use some ready rod, I thread that in there, and then I tack it on, and then I cut off my excess there. So as you can see, there it is, and then we've got a nylon locker on both sides. Again, that's a 1/4 inch, and the factory hole in there is a 1/4 inch as well. So I just use that nylon locker so that this will twist, because the original one moved as well, because when this arm goes up and down, it's going to you're going to need to articulate this piece here. I took this rod, which comes out of the actuator for the bottom of the lift gate there, and it goes in right there. I basically lined it up here, and then I measured and I cut off a spot, and then I welded it right there. And you can see where I've done that. So this piece here will work with our swivel joint that we've built, and then this piece here will go to the factory actuator right there. I like the fact that this is all able to come apart. It's stronger. Hopefully we won't have to worry about this disconnecting again in the future and not being able to open that lift gate. So if we're going to go through this trouble of fixing it, we want to make it better so we don't have to go through this again. And then that also too is removable now as well. Here's the finished installation here. We can open the door. With the key in here, we turn it this way. That's going to be locked. And when we turn it the other way, you can hear that engage. And that's right there. On the inside here, you can see here is our switch where that plugs in, and that bolted on right there. And everything's installed here. This here is the arm that goes to the actuator right here. This is your power locks. When I click that, that's going to lock it or unlock it. That's the mechanism right in there. And then here's where I rebuilt this piece here. Admittedly, I would like to redo this because I've left some room down there, and I could actually lower that down a little more, and I think that it might have the handle work a little better. It works, but I think if I got it down a little lower, it might work a little better. But here it is, finished installation. Everything works as it should, and I'm pretty satisfied with the way it turned out here. We did a little rework here with our linkage, and we're just going to go from the top to the bottom. So this is the factory linkage right here, and all that is, that's not a particular thread that you can fit a nut on or anything like that. It's threaded so that this piece here will fit on there, and you see how this is on the left side there, how that's squished together. It's not supposed to be like that. And this is the factory piece that snaps onto there, and then what happened with ours is that it failed, and then this became disconnected, and then you couldn't open your door no more. That is the factory piece right there. Right here is our first attempt at building a custom rod with a 1/4 inch threaded rod here. And the idea behind that was for our little piece here that's bolted onto our arm. So we made that little piece, bolts on there, and then we have a nut on either side, and then we can adjust this up and down. It was working pretty good, but I ran out of travel. I built a new rod here. This is just a piece of 1/4 inch threaded rod, and then I turned this end down here to match that, and then I bent it to match, and then I give myself some more room here to here. When I use those two nuts to move that up and down, I got some more room to play with there. If we set it like this, this is going to be what it's going to look like in the door there, and then you can access these nuts from the inside of the vehicle if you had to, or you just open up the hatch and adjust it, close it and adjust it and close it, whatever you choose to do. But this here now will get us dialed right in, and you can adjust that right to where, you know, as sensitive as you want it to be. And now we can adjust that, we can make it open really nice, and I don't think that that's going to break on us. For example, if we take a look at this replacement piece here, that's plastic, that could break on you, and you're left with the same problem again. Whereas this one here, I don't think that's going to break. We got a good heavy rod, we got a good metal piece there. Everything's going to last, it's going to work for a long time.